Picture this. The bills are stacked like a wall. Fuel, parts, wages, land payments, each one bigger than the last. Parker looks at the numbers and they don't blink. $15 million on the line. Repairs eating cash every single shift. And then, out of nowhere, the sluice shows a shape that doesn't look real. Not a smooth lump. This one looks like lightning froze into metal. Everyone stares. For a moment, the stress goes quiet. That crazy nugget isn't just gold. It's a sign. It says, keep going. It says, you were right to bet big. But here's the truth no one likes to say on camera. A beautiful nugget doesn't pay the diesel bill. It doesn't fix the pump. It doesn't stop winter from slamming the door. So why call it crazy? Because in a business where money burns and weather decides, finding something rare can push a whole crew through another week of risk. That's why Parker still uses that word, crazy, rare, a little bit unreal. And this season, he needs every bit of hope he can get. The ground is waiting, the clock is loud, and one wrong move could turn that crazy high into a very real low. But that wasn't the whole story. Gold mining looks simple on TV. Dig, wash, weigh, celebrate. Real life is the opposite. Before the first ounce shows up, the crew pays for everything. Fuel trucks come in and leave lighter. Tires wear down. Belts snap. Bearings scream. Hoses split. Each little thing steals a day and a pile of cash. And over all of it, Parker holds a land deal that doesn't care about excuses. Dominion isn't a nice idea. It's a contract with a timer. Miss the window and the ground turns hard. The water turns to ice, and all the money you pushed into dirt just sits there until spring. That's why the season feels like a sprint with steel boots. You race to thaw pay, race to move gear, and race to get enough gold to feed the beast. Royalties take their bite, hauling takes another. If a pump goes down, the whole line stops and the clock eats your lunch. People online love to debate if the risk is worth it, but for the crew, risk is the job. Parker calls the shots because someone has to. Buy the plant, roll the dice on a new pit, move the whole operation across rough road while the weather laughs at you? There's no perfect answer, only the choice you can live with when the numbers come due. And that's where the pressure flips the story. Because when the math gets ugly, you don't just need gold. You need momentum. You need proof the ground is still with you. That's why one loud cleanup can change everything. A jar full of chips is more than money. It's fuel for the whole team. Still, the bills don't stop, and neither do the problems you don't plan for. But that wasn't the whole story. This world runs on hard work and heavy iron, but it also runs on whispers. A suction line disappears, and suddenly your plant is just a big metal statue. Road bands hit in the spring thaw, and your trucks sit still while the mud laughs. You need a loader for 2 weeks. But the hill isn't slick, and the hours are expensive. You bargain with neighbors, trade favors, and pay in ounces because time is more valuable than cash out here. Meanwhile, water rules turn into a second job. If you can't move water, you can't move gold. Creeks shift, bridges wash out, a culvert goes in, and everyone holds their breath as machines crawl over it and the current fights to pull it apart. One wrong angle, and you're rebuilding a road with winter coming at your back. And then there's the chatter. Who switched crews? Who got sidelined? Who's out? Who's in? Who's done? Most of it is noise. Some of it hits. People toss around names. Mitch, this person, that person, as if all the answers are on a message board. But the pit doesn't care about rumors. The pit cares about flow. A belt snaps, and you are now a mechanic. A pump coughs, and you are now a plumber. A generator floods, and you are now an electrician with cold hands. Nothing here is simple. Everything here is expensive. And when something finally works, you can feel the whole crew breathe for the first time all week. That's when the ground tells a different story, one you don't see until the pay dirt opens up. And just when it feels like the noise will never stop, the dirt gives you a message you can hold in your hand. Not all gold looks the same. Most of the time you see flakes, chips, fine lines in the mat. It's money, yes, but it's not magic. This one was different. The angles were sharp, like a storm trapped in metal. Dendritic, they call it. Branching lines, natural art. You can't plan for that. You can't order it from a catalog. When a nugget like that shows up, the crew gathers close and everything else fades. For a few minutes, nobody talks about the pump or the payment that's due. They just stare. Because a piece like that is rare even in places rich with gold. It's proof that the ground still has surprises. It's proof that the long nights and the busted knuckles weren't just noise. People ask, does the shape matter? Does it change the money? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But the real value is the story. This This piece tells every tired face on site that the push was worth it. It tells the boss the gamble wasn't foolish. It tells the audience at home that nature still has a wild side. You can put it on a scale and call out the ounce count, but that number won't tell you how the crew felt when they saw it. That feeling is fuel. That feeling is why people keep digging when everything says stop. Of course, beauty doesn't fix a broken plant. It won't refill the tank. It won't talk the bank into patience. So the nugget goes in the jar, the photos go on the phone, and the excavator fires back up, because after the high comes the checklist. And while Parker fights the clock on one claim, another miner is fighting something harder: doubt. But that wasn't the whole story. There's a different kind of pressure you don't feel until you're empty. Rick's comeback isn't just a new pit, it's a bet on himself when the stakes are personal. He let go of the house that held old memories because the path back to gold needed cash now, not later. He spoke about the dark places he'd been, no showy words, just the truth, and then he went to work. This isn't a slow-motion victory lap, it's a grind with a budget. He rents a loader by the hour because buying one would bury him. He hunts for a suction line because the old one vanished, and a replacement costs more than he wants to say out loud. A pump shows up heavy and expensive. One slip and it's a season killer. Set it wrong and you flood the plant. Starve it and you waste a day. He picks a smaller wash plant to stop the bleeding, then aims for a bigger one when the pay looks better, because that's the only way to climb out of the hole before the bills swallow him. Every choice has a sharp edge. Crew members make mistakes because they're tired and they care, and they're human. A truck tips close to a drop. A belt tears in the worst spot. Fuel runs dry because someone trusted a gauge that lied. He owns the errors, keeps the team together, and goes again. People whisper online about who got kicked off which crew and why. Some stories are half true, some are just noise. Rick doesn't have time to chase every rumor. He's chasing ounces because ounces are the only answer to debt. And when he puts 20, 30, 40 in the jar, it's not just gold. It's proof that the comeback has a pulse. But the season isn't kind. The weather is wet, the roads are rough, and the ledger is cold. So he pushes, and he hopes the next cleanup buys him another week. And what Parker does next will decide if his big gamble becomes a win or a lesson with a very high price. Back on Parker's side, the scale is larger and the rope is tighter. Dominion is huge, but huge is a promise you have to keep. You can't trick a season. You have to feed the plant, move the water, and keep trucks rolling over roads that want to break under the weight. That's why the crew works like a relay team. If one person slows, the whole line drags. A mechanic jumps to a loader because the pad needs material now. A dozer pushes a road because a bridge won't survive the melt. A foreman counts loads like a heartbeat. The goal is simple: turn dirt into gold faster than problems turn time into debt. When the ground is good, it's like the claim is cheering. A week of strong pay puts the crew on a high no speech can match. That's where Australia Creek showed its teeth in a good way. Fast ounces, quick proof, speed that makes the numbers sing. Not every week is like that, but you don't need every week. You need enough weeks stacked close together before winter puts the brakes on everything. That's why a standout nugget matters. Not for resale, not for bragging, though yes, everyone takes a photo, but because it keeps morale hot. It turns a rough morning into a night shift people actually want. It reminds the crew they're not just chewing mud. They're finding things people talk about for years. And still, there's the noise. Road rules, water limits, people speculating about crew changes across the valley. The show around the show never stops. But when the cleanout tray lights up, the chatter fades. Gold talks in a language everyone understands. It pays the parts bill, it pays the fuel bill, it pays the land payment that keeps Parker in the game. And if the ounces stack fast enough, the season flips from "we're in trouble" to "we're ahead." But that wasn't the whole story. In this world, a single find doesn't finish the story. It buys more story. One rare nugget buys another week of diesel, another run at the pit, another chance for the plant to hum instead of groan. It buys belief. Belief is what keeps a crew out there when the weather is sideways and everyone's knuckles are raw. For Parker, belief is tied to a huge promise he made to himself and to everyone counting on him. This ground will pay. He calls some finds crazy because they are. Against the odds, against the stress, something beautiful shows up and hands him proof. For Rick, belief is a rope he climbs hand over hand. He chose risk over regret. He sold something personal so he could stand in the cut and say, "I'm still here." His wins are smaller on paper and bigger in spirit. Every ounce he pulls is an answer to every person who thought the story was over. For Tony and every miner fighting the rules and the mud, belief is a road you build yourself, sometimes literally. You lay down rock after rock until the haul trucks can cross. And you don't stop when the creek bites. The audience feels it too. They tune in for big numbers, sure. But what keeps them watching is the grit, the near misses, the weird, beautiful moments when nature sends up something that looks like a message. The lightning bolt nugget is that message. It says the ground still has secrets. It says the risk still has reward. It says the story is not finished. And maybe that's the real treasure, not the medal, but the push to keep going when every line on the ledger says quit. Because if there's one lesson the North keeps teaching, it's this. The claim is always listening. It hears the bets you make. It knows if you flinch, and it doesn't pay the timid. So when Parker calls a find crazy, he's telling you what it took to make it real. Stubborn work, scary math, a crew that won't fold, and a little luck at the exact right time. The next cleanup could spark another wild week, or slam the brakes. That's the game. And if you've ever chased something big when the odds were bad, you get it. You don't dig for comfort. You dig for proof. But that still isn't the whole story, because the next storm, the next rumor, the next broken part could flip everything again. And that's why we watch. That's why they dig. And that's why the ground keeps its secrets, right up until it doesn't. There's a reason miners hate quiet, not the peaceful kind, the kind where nothing moves. A quiet day means the plant is down, the trucks are parked, and the money still walks out the door. Wages don't freeze just because a belt snapped. Fuel still costs the same when a loader idles for hours waiting on a part. The weather doesn't care if the mechanic's hands are numb. If the creek rises, it will wash your road out whether you're rich or broke. That's why the crew jumps on problems like they're fires, because they are. A leaking hose is a small fire. A blown bearing is a bigger fire. A pump that won't prime, that's a wildfire. You put it out fast, or the day goes dark. Most viewers see the gold count and the cheers. What they miss are the tiny wins that keep the day alive. Someone finds a spare coupling in the back of a truck. Someone remembers an old pulley in a boneyard. Someone cuts a strip of belt from a dead plant to make a guard that keeps rocks from jamming the new one. None of that shows up on the scale. All of it shows up in the ounces later. And those later ounces are the only reason you can keep paying for the now. There's also the math that hurts. If a wash plant is built for big flow and you overfeed it, you don't get more gold, you lose it. The mats can't catch it. The angles are wrong. The water runs too hot. You think you're saving time, but you're washing money straight out the back. So the foreman slows the feed. The loader operator grinds his teeth. The boss looks at the sky and hopes the clouds hold one more hour. That's discipline. That's the difference between a lucky crew and a good one. Here's the other side: morale. A team can handle being tired. What breaks them is feeling stuck. That's why a weird nugget, a strong cleanup, or even a clean fix on a nasty problem can change the whole week. People need proof their effort matters. A shiny piece in the pan buys more than parts. It buys patience. It tells the rookie to stay focused. It tells the vet his experience still saves the day. It tells the boss the plan isn't crazy, it's just hard. And if you're wondering how seasons swing so fast, remember this: mining isn't a straight line. It's a rope bridge in the wind. One day, the numbers are ugly and the mud has your boots. The next, the sluice lights up and the jar fills faster than your doubts. In that kind of world, quiet is the enemy. Motion is life. That's why crews chase flow like it's oxygen. Keep the road open, keep the water under control, keep the plant fed but not flooded. Do that enough days in a row and the ledger starts to smile. Miss too many and winter answers for you. So when Parker says a find is crazy, he's not just talking about looks. He's talking about everything it took to see it at all. The fixes, the close calls, the days where nothing happened except 100 small choices that kept the place alive. That's the part you rarely see, but it's the part that decides whether anyone's still around when the next rare piece rolls out of the sluice.